This is WCRFM. The Prog Rock Files with Gary Foster. This is WCRFM.
Welcome back to the second hour of tonight's show. Now, this part of the show is all about one man. That man is Steve Howe. So we've got some old music, we've got some new music, and we've also got the recent chat I did with Steve a couple of weeks ago. We kicked off this part of the show with To the Moment from the album From a Page. I've said it before, and to be honest, you might agree with me, you might not. I've said this song already sounds like a Yes classic. I mean, we've only had it since sort of like the back end of 2019, but it's just got that hot, brilliant feeling of a Yes classic. And every time you play, it's just wonderful. I think it's superb. As I said, we've got plenty of stuff coming up between now and midnight, and as I said, we've sort of got a couple of tracks from the brand new album Love Is from Steve Howe, which comes out in about 50 minutes, and so we've also got a couple of Yes classics as well. But the next track I'm going to play you, in fact, actually, before I go any further, I'll tell you how to get in touch. It saves me rambling on later. If you want to get in touch, here's the ways to do it. You can email me. It's Gary, that's Garry, at WCRFM.com. You can contact me through Facebook, which is Unchained and Prog Rock Files. Just leave a message there. Or you can contact me through Twitter, and it's all one word. It's at Unchained WCRFM. At the moment, Mixcloud is playing up. We have those IT gremlins, and what I'm going to do is during the next song, take them into the corner and slap them about a bit, because they just need that sometimes. But if Mixcloud doesn't load up tonight, I will do it in the morning anyway, and if it's in the morning, it'll be up before 9 o'clock. So don't worry, there is no escape. But it should also be on the station's Listen Again link, which is be in the morning. That is WCRFM.com, Listen Again link, Prog Rock Files Hour 1, Hour 2, and it'll also be on Spotify at about midnight. All the shows here at WCRFM are on Spotify. Just put in WCRFM and the shows magically appear. I don't know how it works, it just does. There you go. And as I said, if Mixcloud does start to behave, I will upload both these hours anyway. So right, on with the music. I decided to I was there and I thought I'm going to dig out an old Steve Howe song. I wasn't too sure what to go, so during the last week or so I've been rummaging through his back catalogue, and I've gone for this one from the album Homebrew. This is Sharp on Attack. Now, I'll be totally honest, I hadn't really delved into Steve Howe's back catalogue, but if, like me, you're sort of like, you've listened to a few tracks here and there, but you're more familiar with his work with sort of Yes or Asia, there's a great double CD out called Anthology, and get hold of it. It's fabulous. Really is good stuff. I've been sort of just sitting there just marvelling at some of these tracks that I wasn't even aware of. So that is one from his album Homebrew. It's also on the Anthology album, and that is called Sharp on Attack. Right, now Steve Howe has a brand new album that comes out in just under an hour. If you have pre-ordered it, don't expect your Royal Mail courier to be skipping up the path just after midnight. I'm afraid the mail doesn't work like that anymore, but if you have pre-ordered it, hopefully you'll get it tomorrow. It's a fabulous album. It really is good. It's half instrumental, half with vocals, and it just works brilliantly. But you don't need to just take my word for that. You can hear Steve talk about that in the interview. That's coming up in a few minutes, but let's have a track from the Love Is album. The first track I'm going to play you is called The Headlands. Straight after this, it's my recent interview with Steve.
101.8 WCRFM.
Okay, you're listening to WCRFM, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome back to the show Steve Howe. How are you, Steve?
I'm doing all right, thank you, Gary. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. How's life been treating you during these odd times we're living in at the moment?
Well, I think we're all under the same umbrella. You could say it's been awful, but there again, one's just got to find a way of making it much better than that. And just trying to keep a positive, healthy approach to things isn't easy, but, it's what we're all doing. So hopefully everybody's sharing in the same opportunity to not buckle under, but actually, climb above.
Certainly. July 31st sees the release of your brand new solo album, Love Is. I have to say, I've been listening to it for a few weeks now. I absolutely love it. It's a fabulous album.
Great, thank you.
It's your first solo album in almost a decade. Are all these new songs, or are these some ideas that have been sort of kicking around for a little while?
Well, it was all finished last year, but yeah, going back after I did Time, that was 2011, with Paul K. Joyce and orchestral sort of approach to instrumentals. Then I worked with Rhino on two anthologies, the group anthology of the 10 bands I've been in, and the solo record selection. So once I got that sorted, I went back to thinking about solo album, and I was still so busy with Yes, and I just left Asia, the reunion period. And then I did some solo tours, so I was doing an awful lot of other things. In fact, Yes was taking up a lot of my time. But basically, I did this along the way, and I selected from songs that I was writing in the mid-2010s, and also some slightly earlier songs that I kept, in my storeroom, if you like. I kept them under my belt, and I wanted to give them time, I wanted to give them development, and that's where Dylan came in on drums, and my son, who's a great drummer. He's been on most of my solo albums. And basically, John Davison, of all people, was in agreement to sing harmonies for me. I'm very flattered that such a great singer would take that place for me. But he did a great job. We sing well together. We like singing together. And he also played bass on the songs themselves. So I play bass on the instrumentals only. So basically, it's a kind of mix of an album that, I've sort of like really been very determined to put a good step forward.
I mean, the album's it's a wonderful mix of instrumental and vocal tracks, because I sometimes, I've got to admit, if I listen to just an instrumental album, I've got to admit my attention span can sort of waver a little. But I have to say, the mix of instrumental and vocal songs, it just keeps you enthralled all the way through. It really is a wonderful sort of like mix you've got there.
Well, I'm really pleased you said that, because you've said something in a way that nobody's really said to me before. But yeah, like you say, an instrumental album is one sort of thing. It's going to be instrumental. You're never going to get voices. But what I did, it was an idea came from Symmetry, where I would have an equal balance of the two main things I do, which I write instrumentals, and also I write songs. So basically, to mix them in a balance was the way. And then I thought, better than that, instead of having like 3 songs and then 3 instrumentals, to rotate the concept. And that's really where I thought I might start with on the balcony. But like with running orders, they're so important that you create a sort of drawing into the album, as opposed to, hit them over the head and then leave them, maybe not wanting more. So I thought the way to get the balance right, and I did this with the trio album, Steve Howe trio album called New Frontier, and I've done it on a few albums actually, where I've kind of wanted an introduction track to kind of draw you in, get your curiosity, then hit you with a bit of excitement, and then kind of go in and out, weave in and out of that sort of dramatic, less dramatic, soothing, pushy, slow, fast, and that's what I think of as a good balance, and that much harder for the mastering process to get that right. But as usual, Simon Hayworth did a great job in mastering the record with the tonality of each track, so they knit together like a good album should. But it did start with a good running order, then it started with great mastering.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as I said, I'm really enjoying the album, and particularly tracks like Fulcrum, Love is a River, On the Balcony, as you've just mentioned. But what I like about the album is it's almost like a little bit of a trip through the decades. There's sort of some 60s influence, some 70s, some 80s. It almost feels like a very autobiographical sort of record. It almost feels like you're sort of reading it from cover to cover like a book.
Well, you might be right. I may not have sort of set out to do that. I guess I would have allowed myself to draw from different eras of my writing that things were, tucked away, and I discovered, then I thought, that seems to work. So yeah, there is a sort of variety of eras, not purposely created, but actually almost by default, that my music is about the 60s, and it is about the 70s, it is about the 80s. I mean, my music is about those things. So I think maybe in the way I did the song selection and building or strengthening or balancing the album has created something that is, in the first part, autobiographical, but to be autobiographical, it's hard to say that word so often, but it's actually, as I said a moment ago, I am from those eras, that's what I took inspiration from, particularly the Beatles.
Yeah, and you can sort of see the influences as well. And sometimes it's quite obvious, but sometimes it's quite subtle as well. And I just think it's got a lovely flow to the album. It really is.
Well, thank you. I'm delighted you like it. I really am.
I mean, talking about autobiographies, you released your actual autobiography earlier in 2020, All My Yesterdays.
Yes.
How did you approach this? Because are you somebody who keeps journals, or is it a case of you've got to sit down and sort of like really sort of drag through your memories?
Well, yeah, I mean, if I'd been the kind of person who kept a diary or something like that consistently, then it might have been, it might have been something else. But basically how I got into this was that it came to me in 2009 when I had 3 weeks, when I had the luxury of staying in a chalet above Stade or Gstaad in Switzerland. My dear friend Paul Sutin had lent me, He said, "I'll stay up in the chalet." And I really got up there and I thought, I haven't got anything to do. What should I do? And I suddenly thought, well, I'd always thought it would be a challenge to write a book. So very briefly, I did about 15,000 words, which to me seemed, quite a lot, but it was only about my early days. So I thought, no, I'm not doing this anymore until I get a deal. Well, in the mid-2010s, through my son Dylan's wife, Zoe, who's a writer, then she introduced me to Omnibus. She said, well, maybe they'll like it. And of course, it was obvious. Well, it was nice, but it wasn't obvious to me until I met them that we'd kind of worked together indirectly because they're part of Music Sales, who published books for Warner Brothers of my music. So there was a sort of feeling that, oh, wow, this is kind of homely. Anyway, they got behind it. They offered, to release, publish the book and everything. So then, in those last 5 years, well, 4 actually, I kind of got on with the book, and it did have to kind of fit round. So what I did, because I'm already quite good at doing, when I've got multiple projects running at the same time quite often, and how I do that is, and I did this with the book. I saw a week coming up, say in 2 weeks, I saw this week, and I was thinking, well, doesn't look too bad. I'll give that to the book, So I'd give weeks or periods of weeks, days, I'd assign them to a project. Now, I didn't always get on the case necessarily. Maybe I didn't feel like it. Maybe something came up. But as a pattern, that's what I was doing. I was designating time to the book so that I could actually get it finished sometime in the near future. So what happened was that system really worked, and I'd go back to the book. And what your question was mainly about was how I managed to remember that stuff. And so, just very briefly, the early stuff was obviously very much more from memory than anything else. I didn't have too many references. I had a diary that I'd kept from 1967, which was a fortunate thing. So I did see some dates and things that I was up to. So I did get some prodders. They prod your mind, and you start thinking, and maybe you do a bit of research on the internet and do things. So I did all my own research, all my own writing, and basically I had full control over it. So as I went through and got closer to the last 30 years, as opposed to the sort of previous 40 years, I had more. I had loads of calendars where I'd written down, I'm off to Rio de Janeiro, I've just come back from Switzerland, I'm doing a session with these guys, or so I could tell the story very accurately about when I did a home brew or when I did it. So I found that kind of useful, but I didn't want to make it too much like a straight-ahead travel log because I wanted to tell my reaction, my emotional story about how I was feeling about my life to some extent. But I never liked biographies which create a feeling of pity me. Look how messed up I am. Look how difficult my life is. I wasn't going to tell. Everybody has difficulties in their lives. That's without doubt. But what I wanted to do in this book was not being too breezy about it, but just kind of work through stuff, be factual, actual, try and make it interesting. But also, I'm a guitar collector. I like cars. I read books. There's stuff I had to kind of include in that just to give people a rounded view of me, not just a because it really is a career book. It's not about my family. I couldn't write a book about my family. It's much too personal, and I could only work in so much of that stuff because that's another side of me. But this is about the guy people know as Steve Howe. It's not a giveaway, telltale story thing. This is really about the facts, about the side of me that I'm welcome to share, or I have to share, really.
I mean, have you been pleased with the reaction to the book so far?
Really pleased, yeah. I mean, the sales got really good, and lots of people, friends, write to me, "Oh, got your book, I just got it," and some dear friends did the same thing. "Oh, I just got your book," and they write back and they say they've enjoyed it and like it, and so it has been quite joyful, really.
Excellent. Unfortunately, 2020, we've all had the rug pulled from underneath us as far as live shows are concerned. But the good news is that the live shows you were planning this year have been moved to next year. Quite an extensive tour, 33 dates across Europe and the UK. I mean, that is some schedule. But you're going to be playing the whole of Relayer on these shows. Are you looking forward to finally getting round to doing those?
Totally. That's why we got ready last year by including The Gates of Delirium in our show, because we really felt that this album is a highly tricky kind of project, particularly because the last two songs, the Sound Chaser to Be Over, haven't been played since 1978 or something. So basically, those songs have missed the live performance. And what I was relieved about, because I thought it might be utter hell trying to get back and learning those two songs in particular. As I say, Gates was covered, but those other two songs have not been. Besides, I did do a solo version of To Be Over, which is quite accurate, but it's instrumental. It's on my album called Natural Timbre. But basically, I started work on it, and at first with great trepidation, I thought, oh my God, this is going to be, what am I doing here, and how do I work this stuff? What am I playing? What the hell is it? Because I hadn't been playing all that stuff. But actually, a lot of it started to slip back, into me, and I could sort of get the idea of what I was after. And it was getting printed in my mind. You see, to get to learn, because I'm self-taught, I have to learn the music mostly from memory to start with. I have to know what's coming next. I can't be asking myself when I'm playing a song like Sound Chaser, what's next? It's got to flow. So I've got to get that flow in my mind of what, particularly with that solo guitar section in the middle, which is like a sort of rock and roll flamenco. I don't know what it is. But it's basically something that I look forward to playing on stage. It'll be very exciting. So, the whole thing, songs like To Be Over are going to be joyful. Sound Chaser is going to be exciting and challenging. And then, we're going to start out with Gates. So,
I mean, I was only 7 when the album originally came out, so I discovered it many years later. But I've always looked at that album as a pivotal moment in Yes's history, because it was sort of like, I almost felt like, I mean, just personally, I always felt like it was moving from the long, drawn-out pieces to the more accessible, sort of almost radio-friendly era. You still did long songs. Was that a conscious decision at the time, or was it just the natural progression of the band?
Well, everything Yes did was just the best thing we could do at the time with the ingredients we had, the ingredients being, of course, the people. And I must say that Patrick Moraz made a mark on that album that's indelible, and it's a phenomenal piece of work, and it was a highly collaborative piece of work as well. But, Patrick comes through on that, the keyboards come through in a way that is far-reaching, say, than other keyboard perspectives, which were great, they were fantastic, but I think he took it to another level, and that kind of helped us take things to another level. So it is very intrinsically Yesized in a way where like the drama of Soon, or the sort of the sort of natural acoustic beauty of things that we could do, like To Be Over is such a it's such a kind of positive feeling, and it drifts a little bit, and it's got some wonderful moments in it. So basically, we definitely made a very specialised album, one that Yes was very afraid to play later, and there was no way that a 90s or 2000 or anything, or certainly the 80s, wouldn't have attempted anything from that album, because it's not easy.
I mean, it's a fabulous album, and as I know that myself and a lot of Yes fans are looking forward to those shows. I'll definitely be at the Birmingham Symphony Hall for sure. I mean, we'll just recap. Steve Howe, you've got a brand new album, Love Is, released July 31st. I wish you every success with it, because I think it's a wonderful piece of work. You've got the autobiography, All My Yesterdays, that's out now. And then in 2021, we're going to be seeing you guys playing relay around different venues around the country. And we can't wait.
All right, well, thanks very much.
Steve Howe, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Gary. All the best to you and your listeners. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
101.8 WCR FM.
The night sounds great with 101.8 WCR FM.
That's a brand new track from Steve Howe's new album that comes out in about 20 minutes. That is a song called On the Balcony. It's from the album Love Is. It's a really, really good album. Thoroughly enjoying it. Before that was my recent interview with Steve, and he's great. Really is a good guy. I've interviewed him twice in the last 12 months, and I found him sort of like just very, very chatty. And really, really nice guy to talk to. Before the interview, you heard another track from the Love Is album, and that is The Headlands. Just to mention that my guest on next week's show is Joe Payne. He's got a brand new album that comes out next Friday, so you're going to be able to hear the recent interview I recorded with him next week, and a few other tracks as well from the album. Coming up in the next few weeks, I've got interviews with Tim Bonus, also a band from New Zealand that I played on last week's show called Outside In. I'm going to be chatting to them next week. You're going to be able to hear that soon. And also you're going to be able to hear in the next 2-3 weeks, I would imagine. I haven't got the exact date for it. My recent interview with Fish, recorded it today. How much more recent can you get? I don't know. My guest on Tuesday night's Unchained show, I said if you're not familiar with it, it's just it's just a wander through, just a wonderful mix of music. My guest is Clark Datchler from Johnny Hates Jazz. They've got a new album out, coming out. It's fabulous, really is good, a little bit different as well. And I spoke to him a few weeks ago, and he's a really interesting guy. It's a very interesting interview. So he's my guest on Tuesday night's Unchained show. Right, okay, let's move away from Steve Howe's solo stuff. Let's go to his day job. This is Yes from the album Fragile. This is South Side of the Sky.